So I usually start by telling a topical joke, but not today. I don't approve of political jokes. I've seen too many of them get elected. I might be one, yeah. Okay. Jokes aside, it's important to get young people engaged in the democratic process. So I can't think of a better location than Pittman Hall to make this announcement today, a virtual hub of student activity. And I believe that if municipalities made the switch to ranked ballots, it would foster more engagement and a higher level of decency throughout the democratic process, especially from young people. You know, municipalities really are the governments closest to the people. They provide frontline services like public transportation and recreational facilities. Our communities need to be vibrant places where people can live, work, and raise families. And municipal governments are those governments which try in a very specific way to turn cities into communities and streets into neighborhoods. And it's very, very important work. For this reason, we want to help make sure the rules governing how municipal leaders are elected are clear, that they're simple, and reflect how modern campaigns and elections should be run. Over the past year, we asked how we could make local elections work better while keeping them fair. And Ontarians responded. There were over 3,400 individual Ontarians who took the time to communicate with their provincial government through our ministry to share with us what they thought should happen. We heard that the rules governing municipal leaders, how municipal leaders are elected, need to be modernized. See a lot of nodding heads here. More transparent and more accountable, and flexible enough to allow a local choice. So today I intend, this afternoon, to introduce legislation that will modernize municipal elections. Just now you heard my parliamentary assistant, who's done a lot of really good work on this. Thank you for that. Speak about ranked ballots, and I should just demur here for a moment to point out that the Deputy Premier, Minister Matthews, she's also the Minister responsible for the poverty and something else, President Treasury Board, right? And you know, nothing, just the, and Mr. Matthews and my good friend Mitzi Hunter, who I got to work with. She was my parliamentary assistant at one point, and I'm not surprised that she's doing such a splendid job on the pension stuff. So, but all that aside, they've both been big supporters of the ranked ballot concept. So thank you for that very much. These changes, the changes I'll be proposing this afternoon, if passed, we always have to add that. We do have a majority government last time I checked.
You'll have to pass it.
We'll give all municipalities in Ontario the option of using ranked ballots in future elections beginning in 2018. If this legislation passes, Ontario will become the only jurisdiction in Canada to currently provide municipalities and voters with an alternative to the first past the post system of voting. It's important. Let me just say a bit about why it's important. We had an election in Toronto where a candidate was elected with 13.8% of the vote. We had a recent by-election in my beloved city of Hamilton where 19% of the voters voted and the candidate won 19.2% of the vote. So do the math quick, eh? Less than 4% of the eligible voters, and to claim, now I wish her well, there's no malice in that, those are the rules, she got elected under the rules, but that and the other might both constitute good cases for where ranked balloting could be used and might have made a difference. We don't know that, right? So should they choose to do that, they'll be enabled to do that. And we've had a technical working group with people from the Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association, AMO, and some municipalities that had expressed an interest, and some advocates working together on how that technically can come together. So education could be an important component of this. So other proposed changes. We also heard that Ontario's municipal elections are just too darn long. You register January 1st and you're going. I think Mayor Tory said to me at one point he'd been to 811 community meetings. And he mused about maybe they should just send the tape because the same people travel to the same meetings and ask the same questions, right? Anyhow, so Ontario currently has the longest nomination period of any province in the country. For that reason, we are proposing to shorten the municipal election campaign period by 120 days. This means candidates would not be able to register to run until May 1st, and the fourth Friday in July, instead of January 1st, to the second Friday in September in the year of an election. To be able to register from May 1st to the fourth Friday in July, and get on with it from there. And we're responding to another common request to increase transparency in municipal elections. We are proposing a framework to regulate third-party advertisers. The framework would include setting contribution and spending limits. Only contributors who are eligible under the Act could register as a third party. Third parties would also need to specifically identify themselves on signs and advertisements. We are also proposing changes to campaign finance rules. These would help ensure that the rules are not only transparent, but consistent with accountable, fair, and modern election finance practices. To give you a couple of examples, all municipalities would be able to ban corporate and union donations if they so choose.
Yay!
Only the City of Toronto does that at present, I believe. But that option would be extended. And the province would set clear spending limits on post-campaign spending on gifts and parties. Now, there's a story out there about somebody who had a surplus of $218,000 after the campaign. So he just threw a $218,000 victory party, right? There's another candidate in a big city who had a surplus, and he bought his 15 favorite campaign workers all new Rolex watches. If I'd known that, I would have gone door to door. I've always wanted a Rolex watch, but so that will be limited. I think the scheme is to 10% of eligible expenses, so that kind of extravagance. People don't give candidates money to throw big elaborate parties or give away Rolex watches, right? That's just wrong. And there are other proposed changes I plan to introduce that would help everyone, voters, candidates, and contributors, better understand election rules. Today, I intend to respond to the real and evolving needs of our communities. The proposed changes to the Municipal Elections Act, it's actually not called that. It's called the, what's it called? Modernizing the Municipal Elections Act.
Municipal Elections Modernization Act.
There's a fancy term. Will increase transparency in municipal elections. By promoting local choice, these proposed reforms are a huge step forward. Friends, it's time for us to put the wheels in motion because your voice and all our voices matter. And because they matter, we want to make sure we do it right, we do it fair, we do it in ways that complement and encourage people to get engaged in the democratic process. And so we're going to move forward with it. That's my role as Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and I take it seriously, as seriously I suspect this room. So thank you very much. We'll take questions. Anybody have a question?
Minister, you talked about, you mentioned that the switch would bring higher decency to campaigns or to the election. What do you mean by that?
Can I explain that?
Yeah, please.
Sure. Well, in jurisdictions that have this kind of voting system, they've discovered not only do more people vote, take it more seriously, but there's a more civil engagement in the process. You tend not to, based on the polling data that shows you at 19%, you know, kind of like some jurisdictions, I think that the one south of us, you know, sort of yell at everybody, right? And when there's a ranked ballot, you need to get them on. You need to have a substantive discussion about the issues, because that is more of what the electors demand. And if for no other reason, you want to have a approach resembling decency, because you may need to count on somebody else's supporters to put you over the 50%. That make sense?
And people that are more, let's say, less like rogue sort of candidates that have a specific support base. It seems to be people that are then more...
An axe to grind or whatever, sure. Yeah, no, that's true. That's, I guess, part of the peripheral thinking.
Mr. Any comment on the fact that the City of Toronto in 2013, I think, passed a motion calling on the province to do this? That seems to be one of the things that spurred this review. And then since then, the City Council of Toronto has sort of reversed, not only saying we don't want ranked ballots, but urging the province not to offer it to anybody. Can you comment on that?
Do I have comment on that? I sure do. I was really disappointed to see it, as was the mayor, by the way. He said so publicly. I've found that about 94% of all those who submitted views said in very strong terms they liked the idea of ranked ballots. Also found that a lot of councillors before the last municipal election supported change and moving to ranked ballots, only to change their mind once they were elected to office. So my hope is that, and one of the requirements of the Act will be for any municipalities thinking about this, that they must hold at least one, hopefully a series of public meetings, that everybody across the province, including the City of Toronto, and the councillors who can make this happen, will be brave enough to expose the idea to their constituents and hear their feedback. And you know, it's part of what drives cynicism that's so often associated with elections. You say one thing as you're campaigning, and then you know, I know according to Mario Como, politicians campaign in poetry but govern in prose, but some of the times it gets a bit ridiculous. So does that answer your question?
It does. Just one quick follow-up is a lot of people say that the reason incumbents don't like it is because ranked ballots cuts the incumbent advantage, that the name recognition they have can't carry them into office. Do you think that's...
Oh, I think that's a solid argument, and I guess my rejoinder to that is if an incumbent's doing a good job, particularly with the candidate likely to have the highest name voter recognition, this should be a bonus to them. They should be everybody's second choice, if not the first choice, right? So I don't think that argument. I don't think that fear is a legitimate one, but I do understand that it might be driving some people away from embracing it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations and thank you.
You're welcome.
You gave us, the Liberals gave us the Green Bill, you gave us the Lake Circle Protection Act,
right.
And I think what you've just done today may do more to help those of us who care about our environmental heritage than all the other acts combined. But the only question I have is, do you think I'm here, by the way, on behalf of Campaign Fairness.
Yes, thanks for your good work, sure.
And it's Claire Malcolmson, our Executive Director. Yeah. Will the implementation of the rules regarding campaign contributions, do you think, be similar to what was done with the City of Toronto? Similar to the City of Toronto Act?
Same, yeah, same.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Because then they have a very simple template to follow.
I thought it was a trick question.
On the contrary, the fact is we were hopeful that there would be a simple template for the municipalities to follow, rather than saying, well, it's too complicated, we don't know how to implement it. But by doing that, you've made it very, very simple, because they can just follow the example.
We want to make democracy as easy as 1, 2, 3.
Anyway, thank you again. That's great.
You're welcome. By the way, I should just say that if anybody Yeah, I think maybe an older person who may have some challenges even getting out to vote knows in his or her mind who they want to vote for. You know, doesn't they can still vote for one person? Their vote still counts. Right?
Minister, it says
Sir.
before you bring in, it says the legislation will also address items such as a requirement to consult before bringing in rules such as ranked ballots.
Yeah.
How specific are you going to get with that in the legislation? Is there going to be specific steps that a municipality has to take, or is it just a requirement for consultation?
Well,
in general?
consultation can, I've learned in my 25 plus years of public service, can take many forms. You know, sometimes it's a referendum, right? Sometimes it's a series of town hall meetings. Sometimes it may be some education followed by some polling. Who knows? There's no one way to do that. So we will make generic recommendations, and we will, based on the work of the technical implementation and education group, also provide some additional information and ideas about how best to go about that. But we're not going to prescribe that specifically.
Do you think a municipality should have a referendum before changing the voting rules, or no?
I think that's their decision. They can hold a referendum anytime they want and anything they want as long as they follow the process, right? We're not recommending that. We think we've heard enough from people to believe this is the way to go. And we hope that councils all across Ontario have the gift of discernment and the wisdom to embrace this obvious positive change.
Minister, have you looked at, is there research evidence, maybe from political science departments or anything, to suggest that the ranked ballot is more democratic than the first past the post system?
Well, the countries that have employed it, London, some European jurisdictions, Australia and New Zealand have not moved away from it. And the evidence points to bigger turnouts, a higher level of engagement, a speculative comment that the candidates seem to get along better, right? All of the things that I referenced earlier. Yes, sir.
Minister, you just mentioned London, England, and moving democracy forward in your speech. Louise Arbour, Evelyn Coughlin, Frank Iacobucci suggested that another way to move local democracy forward is to put party affiliation on ballots, like they do in London, England.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on local municipal electoral associations?
Well, we're not prepared to move in that direction. We think, frankly, you're asking my personal opinion, right?
No, the government's opinion.
Well, I wouldn't pretend to speak for the government on that because we've not addressed that. But my own personal opinion is the idea of independent local councillors making decisions is the way to go, and to not be proactive about changing that. It's interesting that we've had no requests from AMO or Roma or NOMA or the GTHA mayors or chairs or any of the municipal groups or any kind of spontaneous public addressing of that. There may be some academics and others out there who have made comments, but it's not the government's intent to move in that direction.
Those were Supreme Court justices who ruled on that.
Well, fair enough. I mean, they're having a big debate in the United States about appointing a new Supreme Court justice, you know, and it's quite controversial because they're known to have sometimes different views from each other. So we're not going there. That's our answer.
Anyone else?
Mr. Can I ask about school board elections? How does that fit in with this? Because often it's on the same ballot, right?
Yeah, Yanni, I think they're exempted. So I understand it. I tell you why, because sometimes they transcend municipal boundaries and wards, and it would just be. And by the way, we did consult with some educational folk in the Ministry of Education about that, and felt at least the first kind of go around we wouldn't include those, but we'd be open to that down the road. Yes, sir.
Yes, we understand from what you're doing that you acknowledge that we can do better in terms of elections on a municipal level, but would that lead the way, or do you consider having a reflection on the provincial level also?
Oh, I think so. And I could speculate about that, but I've got the Deputy Premier here, so why don't we have her come up and give an answer to that?
So this is very important legislation that looks at the municipal sector, and that's what the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing has been tasked to do. Of course, in the province in 2007, we had a referendum on changing the electoral system, and the people of the province voted to maintain the current system we have. Having said that, I am personally a big proponent of ranked ballots for all the reasons the minister has mentioned. So we don't have any plans right now to move forward with it, but I think we're all going to be watching what happens as a result of this legislation.
Okay. That's a good question. I hope you folks got a good answer.
Last question.
Last question. Young lady.
Are you planning to differentiate between the type of ranked ballots used for, say, a single member position such as the mayor, or for electing councils where you want to get a lot of diversity?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Ranked ballots can be for a president or a mayor or for a party leader,
Right?
because you're electing one single position.
Right.
But if you're attempting to get diversity and want to elect a diverse council, you may want to look at a multi-member ranked ballot proposal, which I think is part of this legislation, but I didn't hear anything about the mayor.
We have a technical working group. I would anticipate, in my own preference, and we'll need to have some more discussion on this, that a municipality embracing this will embrace it for all positions to be elected, not just the mayor or the whatever. We'll take a couple more. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just curious
We'll come to you next.
if you had any details about the types of groups that would be eligible as third-party advertisers, that they would need to qualify? Or
Anyone who's eligible to vote would be. What we want to do is we want to strengthen it so that you just don't say that citizens to eliminate fluoridation in water, right? Or that's just an example. Supports, this candidate or that candidate. You would have to attach a name of a person to that and contact information, and you'd have to have that on all your material. And by the way, you would be allowed no contact. It's a little bit like the super PAC concept in the States, no contact with the candidate. So it has to be seen as an independent effort and one that's clearly identifiable.
Thank you very much for this legislation. I'm particularly excited about the fact that this could also be the first proportional electoral system that could be in Canada, because municipalities that now have that large or multi-member councils would, in fact, be electing under a proportional system, a proportional rate.
Well, we'll see how this works. Proportional representation is a little bit different than what we're proposing with the ranked ballots. It's closer to what was put to the people of Ontario and rejected. But it's something that we can certainly look at, but we want to get this done first.
Well, actually, a multi-member ranked ballot is a proportional system.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. If you're electing two councillors, there's a way to do that, and our technical working group will relate to that.
Will citizens be able to start the process? I mean, councils may be resistant.
Start what process?
Of reform. Will citizens be
Citizens can do whatever they want. It's
Well,
if you have a sense that your council is reticent to get into this, and somebody needs to take the initiative, please do. Okay?
Let's go.
One more, because he's been very involved. Yeah.
Minister, I just want to thank you. There's been a lot of volunteers across the province working on this issue for almost a decade, and we're really excited to see you opening the doors. And we think you're taking the right approach by giving cities in Ontario the choice to do it. And as you said, we're hoping a lot of cities take you up on that offer and choose to implement this for 2018. But thank you on behalf of all the volunteers who've been working on this.
You're welcome. Thank you all for coming.